Okay, so this is going to be a translation and a brief discussion of Pliny's letter 620, chapters 16 through 18. So let's go ahead and get started. Nevertheless, it did shine a little bit again. This is obviously indicating that that dark death cloud has now given way a little bit and they're able to see a little bit of light. Which seemed, remember, is going to mean in the passive not only to be seen, but to seem. And so that's why with the imperfect BA, I'm translating it as seemed with an ED. Which seemed not a day to us, but the indication, indicium, of an advancing fire, of an arriving fire. That short is genitive singular. Here the short is obviously is going to be a FACO ending, and obviously it is going to be the nominative that one sees. Then you have your verb substo, substare, substiti, as to stand firm. And so, and indeed, the fire stood firm, remained, hung around, more longly, a comparative IUS. Again, shadows, which of course is where we get the word tenebrism, that style of chiaroscuro that was painted in the Baroque era of the late 1600s by Caravaggio. And again, ash. That ash then is described as multus, a lot or much, and heavy. And so therefore it's really going to be coming down. Again and again, we, the ones rising, a present active participle, modifying our understood subject in the nominative. We shook off, cutio cutere, meaning to shake or to strike, this, referring to that ash that's falling down on them. Otherwise, alioqui, which is an adverb, you have now the operti that is going with the esamus, and you have the oblici, making, obviously, an potential subjunctive. Operti meaning to cover, oblici meaning to squish or to crush. Otherwise, we, and since it is now then making it with both the operti esamus a pluperfect subjunctive and oblici esamus a pluperfect subjunctive, you are going to translate it to as would have, as happening in the past, but potentially. And so therefore, otherwise, we would have been covered, and even, atque etiam, we would have been crushed by the weight. And so they are essentially expressing that he is, Pliny the Younger, that if you didn't get up and shake all the ash off of you when obviously it's coming down so heavily, then you would have been buried by it. So again, otherwise, alioqui, we would have been covered and even would have been squished, crushed by the weight. The word pondere is in the ablative, and it is from pondus, and of course the genitive ponderis, that obviously gives us the English word pound. I would be able, another potential subjunctive, I would be able, and here it's an imperfect subjunctive, for the fact that obviously to the left of my vertical line I have an imperfect, or I should say present active infinitive, and to the right I have my ending. I would be able to glory, to boast, to brag that not a groan, not a voice had fallen. The reason I'm translating ex caedisse as had fallen from cato cadere is that, remember, possim makes it where we are starting in the past as an imperfect subjunctive, and so therefore a perfect infinitive with that isse, a perfect active infinitive, is going to indicate action occurring before. I would be able to glory, to boast, to brag that not a groan, not a voice had fallen out from me or for me. And then here the fortem is describing obviously his groan or his voice, or more so him himself. Not at all, that's what pater means, brave. Fortis can mean strong, but it can also mean brave, and here it's going to have that sense, in so great dangers. And so therefore he is going to say, he would potentially be able to say that he was brave and didn't even complain. Except, and thus indeed this is why it was, he's giving the real reason as to why he didn't complain, why he wasn't groaning. I had believed. Credidissem, which is from credo, credere, credidi, creditus, is here, again, now I make my vertical line, everything to the left of it is going to be a perfect infinitive, and thus to the right the ending, making a pluperfect subjunctive. Except, I had believed that. Here we have now an indirect statement with an accusative subject, may, and your infinitive perire. Remember, ire, whenever you put a per on the front of it, it means to die. It's where we get the English word perish. We do the same thing with ob ire, meaning to die. Except that I had believed that I died, or was dying, or I should say, that I was dying cum omnibus, with everybody, comma, and you can repeat it again, I had believed that all things were dying with me. And so essentially he is finding some sort of comfort in the fact that the whole world is ending and everybody is dying together. Nevertheless, and thus he says it as such after the aposiopesis, misero salacchio, a miserable solace, however, a great solace of my mortalitatis. And so therefore he's finding some comfort in the fact that everybody is going out together, at least he thinks that way, in the world ending. At last, that vapor, that cloud, that mist, whatever you would like for the caligo, which obviously is nominative, the genitive caligonus, having been thinned, a perfect passive participle from this verb, as if quasi into a fume, or, that's what way is as the enclitic, remember que means and, way means or into a cloud, it departed. So that kind of vapor cloud, the death cloud, it left, it went away. And remember that this case it comes from, obviously, cato, catere, to which obviously you can add so many prefixes, pro catere, meaning obviously to go forth, proceed, re catere, meaning obviously to go back, to recede, and so forth and so on. Soon a true day. And so therefore, finally they get to see daylight again in the true form instead of this hazy mist they have had previously. Again, or also, the sun shone, the sun shined, from, of course, this verb being a fulgale, fulgere, fulsi, meaning it's a perfect tense here with a perfect stem and a perfect ending. However, the day, now the sun, obviously here, described as lurid, kind of like hazy or misty, if you would like. However, the sun lurid, what sort of? It is accustomed to be, esse, sole or solere, when it fails. Remember that indeed when you have sum, esse, fui, futurus with a day, it is going to mean to lack. But when you have facio, facere, feci, factus with a day, it means indeed to fail. And this is describing kind of like the situation at which it looks when there is an eclipse, when the sun fails and gets covered up by the moon. And so that verb, facio, facere, feci, factus, when it has the day, meaning to fail, when it refers to the sun, it is going to refer to obviously an eclipse, as it were. Nevertheless, our subject here is then going to be mutata in the next sentence, omnia. All things having been changed, muto, mutare, mutavi, mutatus, it met our eyes, the ones trembling, the ones scared still. And so therefore, all things having been changed, and it's changed because obviously all of the ash that has come down and the landscape being so vastly different, having been changed, was meeting, curo cure, curi cursurus, that obviously is going to have a dative object, which is why oculis trepidantibus is the object of occurservant. So all things having been changed, met or was meeting our scared eyes, scared still, que, and having been covered, and it's again referring to all things, abducta, having been covered with ash, and that ash is referred to as alto. Remember that altusa can mean high or it can mean deep in the other direction, and that's what we have here, deep ash. And so having been covered with deep ash, tamquam, as though, as if, with snow. And so he's making the comparison that when all the ash has fallen, it's like a fresh snowfall, and a deep one at that you can see with the alto. So nevertheless, hopefully you will find these videos to be helpful, that you are studying, that you are learning the vocabulary and the lines, and good luck.